Okay, so I was going to do a little metallics tutorial. So for metals, and I'm sure you guys are aware, kind of the true metallic metals versus non-metallic metals. I do more true metallic metals, but sort of understanding non-metallic metals helps because you're really trying to, when you're trying to do true metallic metals, you still want to try and push that contrast, force the highlights and the shadows kind of where you want, and not just rely on the metallic nature of the paints. So I've got a couple different examples here, and I'll sort of talk as we go along. But first, I want to just touch on the paints themselves. So I've been using a lot of the Scale 75, the metal alchemy paints. I really like how they, for acrylic metallic, I really like how they flow. There are alcohol-based paints. I've got a couple of these. These are the Mr. Hobby paints for metallic, and they're really nice. They're really nice metallic paints, but just alcohol-based kind of gives you a whole. It can be a pain in the butt. You add different thinner. You don't want to get any water in it. You probably want to use different brushes because if there's particles left over, sort of have separate alcohol-based brushes. They're great, but they're more work. In terms of just metallic paints, some of these ones, I've got some, this is the Vallejo metallic, this is a Ripper metallic, and they tend to be kind of pasty almost. So if I put it up here on the palette, it stays 3D. It's like toothpaste almost. It's just a real thick paint. I had some Games Workshop ones, and I think when I moved, I threw them away because it was just they were so thick, and I just didn't like working with them. The Scale 75 stuff and some of the other ones, some other summer ones, are the Vallejo Model Air because they're made for an airbrush. So if I put kind of a similar color. I haven't used this one in a little while. I got a little
that's
plug.
really thin.
Yeah, it's really. But I mean, you can see just how liquidy it is. It's a lot smoother, a lot thinner paint, so it's nicer to work with, do blends with. So I find the Vallejo Model Air really nice. The colors, I'm sort of, the white metals are nice. The golds and the bronzes and the gold and the brass and these sort of colors. There's an odd shade for a yellow metal. I've done some stuff before I got these. I would basically use this as like a highlight metallic. I would stick with these for sort of my darker tones and then highlight with this because it's just as a purely coating with this. It's such an odd kind of weird gold color. So the Scale 75 stuff I got more recently, and I think they've got a lot more variation in colors, and I really like how they work. I think they're really nice paints. So that's what I'm working with. But these are some other options that are out there. So I picked up a bit of a small figure because I'm trying to work fast. This is one of the Arena Rex figures. I'm not sure if you ever saw that Kickstarter. It's they're interesting gladiator type figures, and it's got some good metallic parts on them. Now this guy, I just did the left shin pad is just in pure. I think it was their Elven metal. And this one I'm going to do more of the true metallic metal, do more pushing more control over the shadows and highlights. But this is a sort of a contrast to if I just didn't do anything and just painted it flat metallic, that's what that looks like. I like to base. I do most of my priming lately in white, but for the metallics I like doing a darker base coat. So I'm using a the Reaper's brown line, or just a dark brown. A black would be fine. Any dark color.
The metallic paints, the pigment in them is actually formulated to be a gold color.
Yeah.
That's why it works better.
Yeah. So this is one of the darker metallics. This is the Necro Gold, or the dark gold. I like to work from dark to light. You can do whatever. There are people who I've seen people do it with this. They lay down the light metal and then just do glazes and inks and things over there and get build up all the shading that way, and that's fine. It just I don't work as naturally for me. So I tried it. I felt visibly at it, so I do the way it works well for me. So for the shadow tones, I like to work in some of the matte paints. So I'm just going to put in a little bit of this Imperial purple. It's just kind of a darkish purple. and mix that with the gold. It just kind of brings down the dark colors a little bit, gives it not quite as bright a shine. So in the shadows they stay, they're more of a semi-gloss than a pure metallic gloss. And then the purple, I mean, I could use a dark, I could use black, I could use a dark brown, you could use a variety of different colors. Purple is kind of a nice contrast to that yellow of the gold. So when you go to those highlights, you get a little more contrast in there. But it's just, just playing around.
So you're going to put your shadow color on first, or you put both of them on kind of simultaneously?
I tend to do just the shadow color first.
Okay.
Not the loaded brush, I guess, that you were talking about earlier. So I'll try and go as quick as I can.
Are you putting it only in the areas where you want shadow, or are you putting it everywhere?
I'm just covering everywhere.
Okay.
The metallics are pretty strong, so it doesn't really, putting a light metallics over it, it's not really ever an issue. And these are nice and thin, so you're not building up a lot of paint. And so, kind of a similar figure that I did, same range. I can kind of pass this around, but that's kind of where I'm trying to go with these metallics. While I'll do the boring part.
Are these plastic or resin miniatures?
These are resin miniatures. This was a Kickstarter that's, as with most Kickstarters, was kind of long delayed, but just recently shipped all the rewards. And I think they're opening up their web store. They want to do it before Christmas. I don't know if it's actually been open yet. But it's a neat project. These are some of the more historical-looking figures.
Right.
It's a pseudo-historical fantasy world. The background behind the game is that the idea is the Roman world never really fell. And the world is a lot.
Never progressed.
And never progressed. But the world's a lot, and then also the world's a lot smaller than it is. So all these different cultures throughout history have sort of come together, and gladiators. And
I think you're going to start seeing more and more of that fusion of historical and fantasy together, because it's just kind of fun. Like steampunk Civil War guys.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So the four main factions for this, you have the kind of the traditional Roman Republic faction, which are these two are from. So that's more of the historical gladiator, with a bit of fantasy in there. You got one guy riding a giant bull, and you get some fun stuff in there too. Then they have kind of a Roman. This is Roman Republic. They have a Roman Empire, sort of combined with the Celts and the Gauls. So that it has some more kind of imperial look to it, but then also sort of figures. Is it
an actual game?
It's a game, yeah. And then they've got a Egyptian faction, which has a lot of cool stuff in it. Obviously there's a lot of neat mythology there. And then a Viking / Native American faction. So they do this kind of the world's smaller, so these cultures have sort of started to interact and mix together. So it's got some pretty cool, some pretty interesting miniatures and interesting ideas behind it. So this is just that first darker shade on, and you can see just with the light, it's got a little bit of metallic feel to it, but it's not nearly as shiny, and those shadows are going to stay shadows as I layer in the lighter colors. Even with the purple, I mean, it doesn't look like it's a purple. It just kind of looks like a dark metal.
Yeah, I actually learned non-metallic metal technique from doing
purple mixed in, and then I put in some of this elven gold. This is just a nice yellow gold, and I'm going to start mixing that directly into the darker metal. So it starts adding more of the metallic tone to it, but not too much. And just a little bit different. Kind of slowly work up. And one thing, I'm not sure if we'll see it with these colors, but the scale 75, it's really fine pigments in there, and they'll actually start to diffuse into one another. So if you put like two puddles next to each other and they're touching, just by virtue of sitting there, they'll sort of start to mix themselves. Which again, you'll never see with one of the Games Workshop or the plain Vallejo acrylic metallics, because they're so thick. It's still 3D. It hasn't flattened out at all. It's just sitting there.
Most metallics are inherently bad, so you find good ones, even if they're different brands, you hold on to those like
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I really like the Scale 75 ones. The only downside is they're hard to get, because stores aren't going to carry them. or don't usually carry them. So you're stuck ordering offline, and they come, in the set. I'm not sure if they even. I think they sell some individual colors, but most of their stuff is just
Yeah,
you're
so
buying the
if
whole
you run
set.
out of the white alchemy, you're buying all the colors.
Yeah.
Still right now.
Yeah, so I mean, and I think kind of the quality of them that I like is just their thinness. So if you look at, airbrush, any metallics meant for airbrush, so like a Vallejo Model Air, they're thinner. They're not going to behave like the bad metallics. So there are alternatives. I'm not trying to say you have to get, these are the end all be all. It's just I really like them, so I might as well use them. But they're if you can find some airbrush metallics, you'll probably get a lot of the same qualities as long as they have the colors that you like. So here I'm just laying on kind of the next higher level of shadows, working primarily on the outside of the leg. The inside I'm going to leave mostly dark, but with a little bit of kind of highlighting towards the edge, kind of a little bit of reflected light on there. And kind of where I'm going with this, sorry, hard to paint and talk. Go to these other kind of example photos, and just kind of the way, on his shins and on his knees, you kind of have that sharp angle, that line. So I'm kind of doing, on one side I'm going up to highlight, and then the other side it's going immediately to shadow, so you get that sharp transition. So that's kind of the style I'm trying to go for.
Super contrasty.
Yeah. It's sort of the same thing you do with non-metallic metals.
Reinforcing the fact that it's metallic.
Yeah.
It's all about those really strong pockets of light.
Yeah. And with the metallic paint, it still sort of has that quality of playing with the light, and as you move it around, it'll catch the light. Which,
you look at a lot of comic book art, it's like very simplistic usually, but you see that really high contrast of light dark.
Yeah. And that's non-metallic metals.
Live off that.
Exactly. But it's in the mini world, it's relatively new. I mean, it started with the Rack and Painters were I think kind of the ones that really made it popular. But it's any 2D art. They want to paint 100 years ago or 200 years ago. When they're doing paintings, you want to do a metal armor. Well, you don't use metallic paints. You got to make it. It's all non-metallic metal. And then comic books certainly more another modern example of that non-metallic painting technique.
Did you say these figures are available now?
I don't know. The Kickstarter delivered them within the last few months. They wanted to do, or they were saying they're opening up the web store and they want to open that up in time for before Christmas. So if they're not currently available, they should be available soon. And the game's called Arena Rex. Like Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it's Red Republic Games is the company, but they've got a Facebook page, they've got their company website, so you can find them online. And if it's not up yet, hopefully they have information posted on kind of when they plan to open up. So it's not extreme yet. Just